It is January 17th, 2025, episode number 15 of the Loose and Groovy Baseball Show. Roki Sasaki still does not know where he's going to sign. Parker, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. I'm excited.
Yeah, so we're kind of at the time now where we're getting closer to spring training, actually. It's going to be here pretty quick. And so what we decided to do is kind of, take a break some free agency stuff and talking about that as that starts to slow down as well. And because a lot of teams already made their moves, there's not really a point in keep to talk about divisions and what they should do during this offseason and what needs they need to address. So today we're going to start getting into our positional rankings heading into 2025. We're starting off with catcher today. So that should be a pretty fun one, pretty interesting one to kind of look into. A lot of factors that go into that. So that should be fun. But to start it off, we're going to be doing, I would call it a loose and groovy staple, bringing it back here late into the off season. But Parker's got some trivia for me. So we're going to give that a go and see what he's got.
Yeah, so I think we can start to make this when we're running out of pop quiz ideas, or I guess I'm the only one that does the pop quiz on you, but this can be kind of a future idea for different teams. But I'll say 3 minutes. I'll give you 3 minutes to name off as many people on the current 40-man roster for the White Sox as you can. And this includes guys they traded and that are on the roster, like, for example, Talkman. I'll just give you one there. So
Okay.
if you want to get started, you can go ahead. Just start rattling them off.
And then
It's
you'll
gonna be
get the,
hard for me to kind of check, but just start saying names.
okay. And then you'll start the timer as soon as I go.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Andrew Benintendi, Corey Lee, Andrew Vaughn, Talkman, Luis Robert Jr., Gavin Sheets, um, I think I already said Corey Lee. Oh my gosh, uh, Jonathan Cannon, Martin Perez, Jordan Leisure, um, Steven Wilson, Tanner Banks. What's his name? Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta move on. Um, Holy cow. It's a lot harder when you're on a time constraint.
You got 2:14. You still got plenty of
Okay,
time.
okay. I think Brooks Baldwin should still be there.
Hmm.
Um, I'm missing other pitchers
And
right now.
remember, the 40-man does include some prospects that are projected to play.
Oh yeah, so probably Rule 5 guys too. Colson should be on there.
Yes.
Um, Drew Thorpe, Kai Bush maybe. Um, I'm gonna Tanner Banks. Who else have we signed this year? Austin Slater. Tuckman, Martin Perez, Miguel Rojas. Who else is at third? Ooh, what's my time?
You got a minute 20.
Yeah, Zach Deloach. No, he got DFA'd, I think.
Correct. He's not.
It's just Justin Anderson, Anderson something. I know he's a relief pitcher. Um, Cannon, Thorpe, Bush, Perez. Uh, I don't think Noah Schultz is on the 40 man yet. Anybody? Oh, Edgar
No,
Carroll might be on the 40 man if he was a Rule 5
he's
guy.
not.
No.
No.
I said Benintendi. Uh, Vaughn, Robert. I got the big guys.
The pitchers, you got to focus on some pitchers, some of the deep cuts. You got 30 seconds.
Who pitched for us last year? I cannot even.
Um, no Miguel Rojas. So you got two names mixed up.
Oh, it's not Miguel Is it
This
Rojas'
could give you
last
two.
name? Or there was a guy we signed from Seattle. I forgot his name.
I'll give it to you. It's Josh Rojas.
Josh Rojas. Okay. And then these pitchers are just I can't. They're
5
avoiding.
seconds.
I think that's it. I couldn't. I can't do any more.
That's still pretty good. I mean, it's tough, especially when a lot of these guys, no offense, are not household names.
Yeah, I mean, and I
You
feel like
got
the team already looks pretty different from last year too, now thinking about it. But yeah,
18.
Yeah.
there's a lot that are like way deep down there, like Juan Carrella, Jake Eater, Frazier Ellard, Tyler Gilbert, Wickelman, Gonzalez. Like I've never heard of a lot of these guys, so
Yeah.
that's tough. Um, in the future, I might just pick a team and have you give me um like their core guys, like maybe their starting nine and then like four bench guys and maybe the starting rotation or something like that. But that
Yeah.
was the tough one. The only reason I had you do the 40 man
It's
and list
because
that many guys was just because of your team.
White Sox.
So
Yeah. That's fair. No, that was fun. It's really hard under the time constraint too. I know it's not normally
mhm.
something we don't do, but I feel like that adds a good challenge to it because you really got to think. Yeah, I wonder even out of like for all of our listeners and even you, I wonder like even out of the names I said, how many guys like people actually knew, you know?
Probably
Like,
not very many.
oh, and Tanner Bakes doesn't even count anymore. I forgot he got traded to Philly. That's not even one. But yeah. No, that was good. I'm excited to kind of give that a run with some of the other teams then too. So yeah, we'll just jump right into our rankings. I forgot to ask, do you have any honorable mentions before we get into the top 10?
Uh, you know, I said we give honorable mentions at the end because I'm gonna some of the guys on my honorable mentions I feel like you'll be kind of shocked by. So
Okay.
let's just hold off to the end. We'll just get started.
All right, you can get us going with number 10 then, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth with that.
Okay, so number 10, and dude, this one was so tough to do because it's hard to really quantify like defense and how much defense should really play a part because for
Sure.
defense catching, it's the most important defensive position. I don't even think it's arguable. I shortstop is close behind, then maybe center field, but I put Patrick Bailey at 10. Some
Mm.
might think that he shouldn't even be in here because his hitting's not good at all. Um,
Yeah.
but the defensive numbers do not lie. He's first in defensive runs saved with 20 defensive runs saved. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe his framing's not good. No, he's the best in framing too with 16 framing runs, which is three higher than the second place. So just he has the best strike rate too. So 53% of his pitches are strikes compared to the average, which is around like 47, 48%, which that doesn't seem like a big gap, but it is. Um, and then I guess looking at his hitting numbers, they could get a lot better, honestly, but I'm kind of banking on him getting better because this will be his third year. And yeah, he really hasn't shown many glimpses. He had an 84 OPS plus with 637 OPS, so a lot to be desired with the hitting, but yeah, I feel like the defensive numbers can put him in this top 10.
Yeah. I he is on my list. He's a little higher up though, so that'll be a little teaser.
Okay.
So MLB Network when they came out with their list, he wasn't even on their top 10, which I thought was pretty bold of them.
Mhm.
Um, won the Gold Glove. Didn't probably only won like was second for Platinum Glove behind Bryce Terang for Milwaukee. So there's that.
Mhm.
I agree with you though. I understand why because I mean if you look solely at the offense, it's pretty bad. But defense, obviously, like you said, is probably the
Yeah.
best, well, if not one of, if not the best defensive catchers. So kind of just what you value more at the position. But for my number 10, and number 10, I had like three or four guys I think you could probably slide in here. And even this might be a bit of a surprise to people. But I have JT Real Muto at my number 10 spot.
Okay. Wow.
And that is pretty low, I know, but I was looking at through some of these other guys, and I think at where they are at in their career and kind of the trajectory, I like them more heading into 2025 than I do JT. Um, and he's still a really good catcher.
Mhm.
And I like that. I probably could have, I mean, I would understand a list that leaves him out, but I was like, I don't want to leave him out because he has been good for a while now, and I feel like that kind
Yeah.
of gives him some benefit over others, but 2022 is his best year recently. He just hasn't really gotten back to that offensively and defensively. Even his defense was really good that year too, and he's still overall a really solid catcher. I'm not saying that. I just think 109 WRC plus. He had a 2 F4, 14 home runs. I just there's nothing here that says, and he's getting later on in his career. Um,
Mhm.
I don't think I expect him to have another big season coming up here anytime soon. I think we may start to see downward trends with him. But overall, I still think he's a really solid choice in Philly. He fits in great there. And again, I'm putting him here because over some other guys, maybe like my honorable mentions, where trying to favor experience and showing that he has had the talent in the past to say, okay, I think you can be on my top 10. But I think I'm pretty happy with all the other guys I put in front of him. So yeah.
Yeah, I had him a lot higher than that, I'll be honest, but I guess I'll get into that argument later on. Do you want to get us started on the next one?
Yeah, we'll snake it. So I'll do
Okay.
two. Two. All right, so moving up to number 9, I have Yiner Diaz from Houston. I think last year was his second full season. Definitely still developing in the defensive side of it, but he's a very, very good hitter. 117 at WRC plus, 16 home runs, 766 OPS. He had a 3.1 F4 last season. Something I wrote down is he does not walk like at all. He had a 3.9% walk rate and he had a 2.9 in 2023. That is ridiculously low. So, you maybe like to see him get those numbers up a bit instead of just being a kind of power or strikeout guy. Um, I still think he's a really good option for Houston. He's still pretty young, and I think he's going to keep developing. Hopefully, they get some of the defensive upside going too as well. But I think primary purpose for him is just gonna kind of be a good hitter there, and maybe we'll see him hit 20 home runs this year, 25 maybe I think is something that's realistic. And I think he still is a very good core piece of Houston. I know losing Tucker hurts and probably Bregman obviously too, but
Mhm.
I think Diaz and Jordan and Altuve still make a pretty formidable bunch there. So yeah, number 9.
I think this is gonna be pretty interesting. Our lists are pretty different, honestly.
Wow, okay.
This number nine might shock you. I'm not sure, but I just have a lot of hope in this guy. I said Tyler Stevenson. He he has proven it hitting 4 out of the 5 years. Last year was his only really down year. He had an 85 OPS plus, but this year 782 OPS, 112 OPS plus with almost 20 home runs, 66 RBIs. And then every year throughout the league, other than like I said that last year, coming into the league, great his first year, not a very, very small sample size, but the second year 800 OPS, third year 854 OPS. So I'm very high on him hitting wise. Now the worries and the reason why he's not higher on my list is the defense. He's 95th in defensive run save, which first of all, just to give a little thing, the only defensive statistics I'm using is defensive run saved because it kind of captures, I feel, everything rather than looking into the deep advanced stats that are very difficult to understand at times. So I use defensive run saved and I use framing runs because I feel framing is the most important individual statistic defensively for catchers. So yes, 95th in defensive run saved with -8, and then 29th in framing runs with -1. So keep in mind that since these are counting numbers, um, there's not really like a qualified no it's hard to really know like it's going to be out of like 80 for each of these it's like 55 for defensive run saves. So some of these if they're 45th that means they're kind of in the middle of the pack, so don't think that that means they're absolutely terrible, but just keep that in mind. Yeah, Tyler Stevenson, the hitting is what gets him at number 9 for my list.
Yeah,
um
so he is on my list. He's a little higher up though,
okay.
actually. So that's that'll be interesting.
Interesting. I
Um,
didn't think you would have him. I'm glad we both have him on here. Give him a little bit of respect because I feel like he's underrated.
Yeah, I'll get into him a little bit more when he's up on mine, but I will
Okay.
say, last year was actually one of his better years defensively. What I'm using is Fangraphs. They have now I don't know what the scale is or what their rating is based off, but they have an offensive score, a defensive score, and then their WAR. But for comparison, I'll just say his defensive score was at 8 last year. In 23, it was a -11, and then the
Oh.
previous seasons it was like point 0.8, point 0.7. So to your point, I think he did improve a little bit defensively this
Mhm.
year. Still not great. Like I think Patrick Bailey is the highest on the Fangraphs one. He's at like a 37.
Yeah.
So still probably like maybe slightly above average. I'm not sure what the exact scale is there, but that's
Mhm.
kind of how I was gauging it. But yeah, I agree. I think he should be on the top 10 for sure.
Yeah. I guess I'll get started at number 8. This is tough. So first of all, the argument can be made that okay, he might not. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but he might not even play catcher all too often. But he does split time with one guy. I'm not gonna say who yet, but I think his hitting cannot be overlooked no matter how bad his defense is, how atrocious his defense is. I'm not even going to give you his defensive stats. That's how poor he is. But I have Salvador Perez. I you just the value that he brought to the Royals, him and Bobby Witt, we've said this so many times. We sound like a broken record with this that him and Bobby Witt were the staple for this offense. Just looking at his last 4 years, actually I can go back to 2015. I'm just going to list off the home runs. So 21, 22, 27, 27. Didn't play in 2019 because he was hurt, and then 11 COVID year, so shortened. 48, so that there's
Where
an
did that
outlier,
come
but
from?
48 in
Look at all
2021,
of his other numbers. He's 48. That's
it's
crazy.
crazy. And then 23, 23, 27. Like he has shown no signs of slowing down. Defensively, he's slowing down a lot, but I mean he's getting older, but I really don't see him uh having worse than like 25 home runs and maybe like a 770 OPS. So just to know that you have a veteran like that that's going to bring the hitting, I feel like is very valuable. So yeah, number 8.
Um, Salvador Perez is not on my list. I didn't
Oh.
even consider him for my list, to be honest with you. Age 34 season, you don't think regression's
It,
gonna start hitting him eventually?
I mean, I don't, I know I'm always the one that usually is the biggest.
Like
I
age
usually,
concern?
yeah, age is usually like a huge factor in my mind, but the fact that he's had over 20 home runs in each of the last 8 seasons, excluding COVID year, I don't really see a reason why I should knock him for that when he's shown that much consistency. Like other guys that'll have like a breakout year when they're like 32 and they haven't proven it before. Yeah, those guys I start to get worried about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. And it also comes down to the team too, how much value he brings that I feel to that offense. So,
That's fair. And I think you could also say value outside of just numbers too.
mhm.
Definitely. He's been in Kansas City his whole career.
Yeah, the
Very
presence, the loyalty.
100%. So I do get where you're coming from. I think having my mindset of just thinking into 2025, um,
Mhm.
I was pretty happy with all the other guys that I think are going to play better than him. So moving on to my number 8, I have Gabriel Moreno from
Okay.
Arizona. I think this is a not I don't want to say more of like a sneaky pick, but maybe a little bit more of an under the radar kind of guy.
Yeah.
I'm really a fan of, I think he's just an all around good catcher. I think a lot of catchers you see, maybe they're really good hitting wise or better defensively, like a Patrick Bailey or like Yiner, like I was saying earlier, where they kind of are leaning more towards the other. But I think Moreno's obviously just a really balanced player. I think he hits well
Mhm.
and he plays defense well. He had 107 WRC plus last season. He actually doesn't K a lot either. He striked out less than 15% of the time for a catcher. I think that's pretty incredible. You see a lot of guys strike out more than 20% or even close to 30%. He isn't a big power threat, so I think that makes sense too, or he's not, just swinging for the fences all the time. He also walks still a good amount, almost 12%. He has 733 OPS. He's heading into his third full season with Arizona. Hoping he can play the full year. I think he was hurt a little bit at the end of this last season. So hopefully he gets some good run here. And I think he was on the best offense in the league last year and probably one of the more underrated pieces of that. And I think he'll still be, part of a really good core in Arizona. Fangraphs has also, they do projections on their website, and I don't know how reliable these are, but I've noticed that the projections they don't vary too much from what they were doing last year, I would say. So he was top 10 in F4 last year amongst catchers. He had a 2.5. They're projecting him at a 4 win season next year. So I thought that was pretty
Wow. Okay.
meaningful that they're giving him that big of a jump. So I think he could have maybe like a mini breakout season next year and kind of be maybe even a top 5 catcher. But I think 8 for me is a good spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can just throw out. I only have a few on here, but he was on my honorable mention. I It was so tough. It was so tough between the rotation of Stevenson, Bailey, and then Moreno. It was so tough to know where I should put those guys. Really for Moreno, it just comes down to last year he played so many games and there was no slugging.
Hmm.
Like you said, there's no power there. so the OPS isn't there, but also he's gonna get better, and yeah, his defense is also pretty good. So I don't know. It was tough.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, in catcher, normally I would say the framework is power. Would you agree? Probably. Like you don't maybe don't hit for average all the time, but you hit home runs kind
yeah.
of.
The bottom of the lineup, just getting that pop every
Yeah.
once in a while. Yeah.
So definitely a little unusual from Moreno or an unusual build for a catcher, but I think it works to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on to number seven. This is where I had Tyler Stevenson from Cincinnati. And I think you touched on a little bit. He had a bit of a kind of underrated season last year. He had a 3 F4, which is his highest of his career. His highest before that was a 1.8, so he had a pretty big jump. 782 OPS, 19 home runs, 112 WRC plus. As a catcher or a DH, I think you're going to be pretty happy with that. Maybe you like to see him hit a couple more home runs here and there, maybe get the OPS above an 800, but he's a well above average hitter. And I think, like you were saying, defense was kind of one of the bigger concerns. But we did see a little bit of a defensive improvement last year based off of Fangraphs, apparently. But also, I think the Jose Trevino signing is going to really help him out. And maybe he won't play as many games at catcher. I think it was like 120 or something he played last year. We'll see
Mhm.
if he matches that, or they decide to maybe do a even split between catcher and DH with Trevino now. But I think still as a catcher, you know what you're getting with the bat, and we hope to see the defensive sides and kind of keep improving. And I think he can round himself out to be one of the better catchers in the league, hopefully heading into next season. So yeah, just
Mhm.
looking for him to build off of what he worked on last year, and he could be a very good piece to a young Reds team that, and kind of part of a core there too. Now, Ellie Stevenson, McLean, Hunter Green, like these guys are all kind of there. They're all still very young and got a lot of control left. So I think I'm excited to watch him play again next year, and we'll see how he does.
Yeah, I like it. This next one, I feel you have him pretty high, maybe just a couple spots higher, but I have some reasons. So first of all, just hear me out. I have Will Smith at number seven, and it's
I love
mostly
this. My six. This is good.
okay. Yeah, it's mostly because how badly his hitting fell off in the second half. I mean, I'm looking at his splits between the months. March 1.05 OPS, April 921, May 773, June 642, and then from there he kind of hovered in the sevens, and then he had a good month in September, so I can't knock him for that. But after those first 3 months, he saw a drastic decline. And while it's the Dodgers and it didn't really hurt them because either way they got a bunch of sluggers in that lineup, come time of the playoffs, it did hurt them that he was slow. And then also defense, he's 78th in defensive run save with -4. And then in terms of the catcher's framing, he has -10 catcher framing runs, which is last out of the 58 catchers. So I used to be the biggest advocate for him because his hitting was always there, and his defense like was starting to come around, but I don't know, just seeing that decline, and also I'll say he was on my fantasy baseball team, so I I got a little maybe there's a little bias there with how
Yeah.
much he hurt me because I kept thinking that he was gonna return to his form, but he didn't. So
Yeah. That was your seventh, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So I'll get into it when we go up to the next one. But I have some pretty similar thoughts to what you were saying. So I'll let you go to your number six now.
number six. So I've got Diaz. This one was so tough because his his offense is awesome. He's a great hitter. He's been consistent hitting, but his defense is just it's so hard to put him any higher than six. And I'm guessing that's why you had him knocked down.
Yeah.
55th in catcher framing, so just about at the bottom. And then 77th in defensive run save with -4. But then looking at the upside of him, hitting, he was 766 OPS with a 118 OPS plus, and then last year, I guess in 2023, 23 home runs, 60 RBIs, with an 846 OPS, with a 128 OPS plus. So between these last 2 years, he's been hovering between 280 and 300 batting average. So the contact skills are there. He has power that you want. Um, So the hitting's awesome. It's hard for me to get around that bad defense. And he is still young. He's going in his age 26 season, so that's another reason why I didn't hurt him too much on the rankings. Because I do feel like if you're that talented hitting and you have still a fairly athletic build that you can improve your defense. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Yeah, I honestly wasn't sure if Yiner was going to be on your list, but I like him up at six. I think that's good.
mhm,
So as I said, Will Smith was my number six. He's kind of similar to like a JT to me, maybe a little different. And Will Smith's only 29, which I didn't know. I thought he'd be a little older than that.
mhm,
But still has, I think, some quality years left in him. But like you were saying, probably his least impressive full season to date. It was only a 2.7 F4. He had 111 WRC plus, 20 home runs, so still producing, but maybe like you said, kind of had a strong start and then tapered off towards the end. And I don't think had a great postseason, at least from watching him.
yeah,
But I again favored experience, favored what he's shown before, and pedigree a little bit, I guess you could say here. He was just kind of like an upgraded version of JT Real Muto for me, where it's like both these guys have shown really good things in the past, like really good. They've been with the teams they've been on for a couple of years now. Both, had a bit of a dip last year production wise, but both still really good choices. And then I kind of just
yeah.
favored Will Smith a little bit more because I think his numbers were a little bit better, and the age is a little bit better for me as well. I feel like you right now talking about age with all these guys. But yeah,
Mhm.
I feel like six where it's like, okay, I can still give you your respect, but I think there's some guys that I would rather have in my team over you. So yeah. Do you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, you're gonna see with my next pick that I've kind of taken the opposite route, I guess, on this ranking video, with the age thing. But
All
yeah,
right.
you can keep going. Number five.
I think we're gonna be, yeah, we might be opposites then here. So
I think our top three are gonna be the same. They're gonna be interchangeable, but I like that you have this one guy higher, unless he's out of the list completely. But there's one guy that I have pretty high that I think you also hit. So,
I think we're thinking of the same guy. But so for my number five, I have Patrick Bailey. This is where I put Patrick Bailey. Um, So when I was thinking about this list, I think we've all said this, but catcher obviously is kind of one of the most important defensive spot, and I think because Patrick Bailey is like does his job so well as a catcher, it was like I needed to put him near the top. I just feel like so the way I was again when I was doing this was the Fangraphs defensive score. He had a 37. The next closest guy was a 23-9, and that's Cal Raleigh, who won the Platinum Glove in the AL.
mhm.
So he is miles away better than the next best catcher at defense. And to me, if you can do your job as a catcher so well, I am gonna give you a little leadway in terms of your hitting. Obviously, it's still not great, and if even if Bailey was probably like maybe an average or a slightly above average hitter, he probably would be like my in my top three, maybe even top two. But I did drop him down to five. 78 WRC plus and a 628 OPS just is not cutting it for me at all. I really hope he can get the bat just anywhere near decent because I think then he'd get more like recognition, but it would just also help the Giants a lot more because they need more power and they need more hitting on this team. And to have Bailey behind the dish is great, but you also just need some kind of offensive output here, I think. Still, though, they're going to be really happy having him there for a few more years or for however long. I also had to write down he's third in F4, he had a 4.2, which is crazy considering the
Oh
offense.
my gosh.
That's pretty much mostly all from defense. I'm third amongst catchers, by the way. I'm sure that's clear. But yeah, I think he's a very valuable guy to have at catcher. Not much else, obviously. But yeah, I hope to see the hitting get up there next year.
Yeah, I feel like the some reasons for why he could be that high, which I was debating moving him up just because of that defense, but just the fact of early on in your career when you're that good at defense, there's really no reason for you to fall off, and I don't expect him to fall off on defense, but you do expect the hitting to get better. So,
Hmm.
yeah, imagine that defense stays the same, or maybe it levitates either up or down a little bit, but yeah, you do expect that hitting to improve as he sees more pitches and gets more used to the big league pitching. So
Yeah.
I can see him taking a big jump. And even if even if his hitting is league average, that can bump him up to like number 2 or 3 on these rankings. That's how good his defense is.
That's
So,
yeah, crazy, right? So
so now getting him at number 5. So I do have JT number 5.
yeah.
And this is a similar argument as the other old guy I have on here as Salvi. JT's offense has just been so consistent. So I'm gonna date back to 2016. So this was his second full year. So his first full year
So this is
about
Miami,
league.
JT, right?
Yeah, Miami. So these first 3 years I list off will be Miami, and then the rest are Phillies. So 111, 112, 126, 109, 124, 110, 130, 105, 109. So he's always been above league average. He's
That's
hovered
OPS plus.
anywhere.
Sorry,
Say it again?
OPS plus is what it is.
Okay,
That
it's false. Yes.
okay.
So he's always around that 10 to 25% but better than league average, with OPS hovering between 750 and 850. So hitting is awesome. And defensively, I get he's getting older, but just he's just 2 years removed from his gold glove, where he posted a 6.6 WAR. And this last year he had a 3 WAR, which was his lowest since his years in Miami in 2016, excluding again COVID year. But I I don't see the defense being above league average. I do think he can return to league average defense. He was 41st in framing with -3 framing runs, and then he was 41st in defensive run save with 0. So slightly below average, nothing crazy, crazy bad in terms of defense. So yeah, number 5. Um, I can move
Well,
on to number
I add
4.
something really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think in my argument, I wasn't. I think the defense is still good enough. I was more looking at, 14 home runs and 109 WRC plus. Do you have his OPS up still from last year on what it was?
Yeah, 751.
Yeah. So I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from with past years' excellence, I would say, and being a really, really good hitter. But and guys have bad seasons all the time, and maybe he'll just come out again and be a really good hitter again. And he's still a good hitter, but be a like that peak JT hitter.
Yeah.
I guess just my rationale was okay, maybe we aren't going to expect that moving forward, and just favoring other guys, maybe favoring the upside more than that. But yeah, I'll let you get on to your number four.
Yeah, well, real quick. So I think a big reason, so that red flag that you were talking about, the only 14 home runs, 47, which was his lowest for in the past like what 10 years that I listed, but he did only have 99 games played,
Mm,
which he's never played less than 100 games. Again, excluding COVID year. I hate having to say that every time, but it's the first time he's played at less than 100 games. He only had 380 at bats. I forget if it was injury related. If it is, and that is another red flag. But
yeah.
he did share time with Garrett Stubbs behind the dish, and that experiment did not go well because Garrett Stubbs, I'm looking, he has a 558 OPS and 160 at bats. So he still had a decent amount of at bats with a 59 OPS plus. So I don't know how much longer they're going to try that experiment. I think they should just go back to running JT behind the dish every day, or as much as they can, for I guess how durable he can be. Um, so yeah, I expect him to play more than 99 games and to reach that 18 to 20 home run peak again. So
Yeah, it looks like
uh,
he had right knee meniscectomy surgery, something like that. He was on a 10-day IL, so that's what it was.
that's not good.
And looks like in probably in like early July is when it happened. So yeah, that's a good
Okay.
point.
So I'm feeling good about these top four. I think
I think we're gonna
I
have the same guys, like honestly.
yeah.
There
My
might be
number
one I think you have him on your list. There's no way you don't, but I'll let you go.
is Austin Wells.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Number 4. He's my next guy. So
That's my number four too.
okay. So we might have top four the same. Who knows? But third in catcher framing with 12, sixth in defensive runs saved with 11. So his defense is already where it needs to be. You're not going to ask for much more than that. Good defense. And then hitting, he was coming for his rookie year. I know he played a little bit in 2023, but great hitting, and I expect him to take huge steps because he's only 20, he was 24 years old. 13 home runs, 55 RBIs. 229 average, so kind of a low average with a 718 OPS and a 103 OPS plus. Again, this is banking on the upside, which I really see the upside in him. Yeah, he had some clutch moments in the playoffs. I forget what his numbers were, but yeah, I can definitely see him taking a big step forward and maintaining that good defense.
Yeah, Wells is my number four. It's my turn, right? You snake
Yeah.
back. Okay, so yeah. So Wells is my number four. I was pretty surprised to see he had a 3.5 win season last year. That was fourth amongst catchers. Um, Fangraphs also has him as a top five defensive catcher. And hitting wise, I think there's stuff you like, stuff maybe you don't like, but he's 105 WRC plus, 717 OPS, 13 home runs, like some of the stuff you were saying. And this was all in his first full season. And I agree with you here, definitely buying into the upside, but I think New York has a pretty good catcher here for a long time. Looking at
Mhm.
some of his numbers too, when he was in the minors, he rakes when he's on. And I think I remember watching in the World Series last year, he looked a little lost at the plate. And I think that's understandable. You're facing some of the top pitchers in the league at that point, and you're still really young and you're still trying to just kind of figure out what works best for you up at that level. But I think he did an okay job. And I think with the defense being there, I think the offense is definitely just it's wide open for him to improve. And I think hitting at Yankee Stadium will also help him out a bit there. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like here, and I was pleasantly surprised to find him this high on my list, but I think it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So moving on to my number three, this is pretty funny. I
Uh-oh.
well, no, it's not going to be bad. I'm more recalling in our AL East preview video. I think I gave this
Dang,
guy a little,
dude.
I gave him a little too much hate. Do you think he should be
Hoping
higher?
we hit the same top three.
No, I couldn't put him above these other two, but
Okay.
still, nonetheless, I think I gave him a little too much flack in our AL East preview, and I didn't mean to. That's just kind of how it came across. Um, but I was looking at the numbers. He did not have a great year last year, so I think it's generous I'm even putting him up this high. But
Yeah.
at my number three, if you don't know it, it's Adley Rutschman. I think he is the WAR leader for catchers over the past 3 seasons, so a lot to like there. Yeah, it was not his best year last year. He's still very young, still I think that was his third full season now. Something I did notice, he still is not striking out that much, only 16%. That's pretty good. His walk numbers are actually down quite a bit though. He had a 13.6 average the past 2 seasons. Last year that was below 10. He had a 9.1. So that could be maybe a facet in maybe he was trying to just swing harder, hit more home runs. But just walk percentage was a little lower. So maybe like to see that get that back up because at his best he's an above average when it comes to that. I think another factor too was we talked about this, but the Orioles were kind of a team that limped into the playoffs. They struggled a lot towards the end of the season, and I think he may have gotten caught up in that, or he was at least part of that.
Mhm.
So I think that could be a factor too. If the team's not playing well, you not be may not be at your best. I know we don't dive into this a lot, but I was really trying to figure out where I wanted to put him. His hard hit ball percentage was actually still really good, which is encouraging to me. Still making good contact on the ball. And I think everything is still there. I think it was just a series of unfortunate events for him this season. And then just a couple other numbers. Slugging and on base was down last year. He only had 104 WRC plus, but he had 135 in 2022, 127 in 2023. So I think, looking past this season, I think he is still going to be a top three catcher, definitely. There's still so much like with Adley, and I still really do like Baltimore signing a backup. I still agree with what I said there. Again, I just think it came across as maybe more of a, oh, I don't like Adley at all, and he shouldn't be playing as much. No, I think adding a backup is still good here. Especially I think who was it? Oh, it was Gary. So he'll probably play DH. Maybe he'll play a few games behind the dish. But still, I'll give my flowers to Adley. Top three, definitely undisputed. So yeah.
Okay. Well, um, I'm not gonna say where I have him, but he's not three. I have Cal Raleigh at three.
What?
And you have say it again?
You said three for Cal?
Yeah. Just listen. There
Okay.
I feel like these three guys could be interchangeable, but
That's fair. That's fair.
I can't see him being number one. I think that's where you're going. Um, so Cal Raleigh, 34 home runs, 100 RBIs. Amazing. Slugging's there, 748 OPS, 119 OPS plus. That's really the only reason why I couldn't get him to that point. 176 strikeouts, so he strikes out a ton. Another guy on my fantasy team, I'm not gonna say that's the bias, but his hitting really,
Sing a
it's
pat.
not to the caliber of these other two. And his defense, again, his defense is amazing. Second in framing to Patrick Bailey, with 13, and then second in defensive runs saved with 17. Second to Patrick Bailey yet again. So again, yes, he won. You mentioned it. He won the Platinum Glove. So his defense is amazing, and he's gonna hit the home runs. It's just the strikeouts and the lack of, like, his best year was 774 OPS with a 122 OPS plus. That's a good year, but having that be your best offensive season in terms of OPS, I feel like that doesn't warrant a number one or even number two finish on this ranking. So I guess I'll just go right into my number two. I said Alley's number two. So 17th in defensive runs saved with four and 45th in framing with -3. So his defense was not good. But his defense, his first year was amazing. Last year it was good again. So he took a step back really in everything. And you mentioned it with one of the biggest factors, and I agree with this, walks. He had 92 walks last year compared to 101 strikeouts, so 92 and 101. This year, 58 walks and 103 strikeouts. So same amount of strikeouts pretty much, and then walks got cut into like
Mhm.
two-thirds of the
Yeah.
walks as he did compared to 2023. So that's scary, but just looking at his rookie year, I don't know if guys are adjusting to him. I don't really think they are. That's why I don't expect him to return to his. I think last year was his absolute floor
Mm.
at a 709 OPS and a 107 OPS plus. Like, he was still above average, and he still had 19 home runs, 79 RBIs. But
Yeah.
his first 2 years, 806 OPS, 809 OPS. He finished 12th in MVP his rookie year, ninth in MVP in 2023. So I don't see Cal being having nearly the same ceiling. I understand he'll have 10 more home runs, Cal, but when your average is like 50 points lower and you strike out like 75 more times, I don't know. It's so tough for me. Um, and maybe I'm also factoring in my anger against Seattle's offense.
Yeah,
So yeah, number two, sadly.
I I I I get what you're saying. I'll get into my reasoning for why I have him higher. But so for my number two though, I have Contreras here, and
Oh, okay.
I, I take it that's your number one.
Yeah.
So I will say this. I think Contreras is the best hitting catcher we have right now in the MLB.
Mhm.
I will say that. I agree with that. Well, because I think originally he came up as like a catcher DH, and when he was in Atlanta, he was mostly DHing. Came over to Milwaukee, and they really are getting him better at catching. To Fangraphs, he was a top 12 defensive catcher last year, getting better. The fact that it even is like a good one now, I think is pretty impressive. He had an 831 OPS, gets on base, he slugs, 131 WRC plus. There's not much I can poke at in his game. He's all around a really, really good catcher. And I don't have much else to say out that about him. But for my number one, it's Cal Raleigh, in Seattle. So I think what maybe this is a little bit of like me being having like tunnel vision, but when I think catcher, I think good defense and I think power. And I think Raleigh is the best guy that fits that. Like
Yeah.
34 home runs and 100 RBIs, and then you want a platinum glove in your league. Like, he's not only the best catcher, but he's also the best defender in the entire American League. Like, to me, that just says a lot. And second best to everything pretty much in Patrick Bailey, we know that. Um, but I think I understand your point with Adley about like this being his floor, and you think his ceiling is higher than Cal's, and maybe Cal has hit his ceiling, but I mean, looking at his past couple of years, he's been a 4 to 5 win player, or 3 to 5, I would say, maybe 3 to 4 win player the past 3 seasons, and I don't see like he always strikes out a lot. You know that's going to happen, but 27 home runs, 30 home runs, 34 home runs, and he had 100 RBIs this year as a catcher. That's to me that's crazy. Slug is always really high, and I don't know. I think just looking at the catcher position as a whole, I would rather have Cal than Adley right now. And I think and maybe I'm just having a little bit too much recency bias off of Adley's last season, and maybe that worries me a little more than it should. But I think Cal hits all my boxes of what I want a catcher to be, and I think that's why he's my number one.
Yeah, I get it. I guess I had my reasons for why I would put William above. First of all, yes, I think it's pretty undisputed that he's the best hitter. Just real quick to run through his numbers. His rookie year, 701 OPS, not great, but then his last 3 years he's went off. So 860 OPS, 825, 831, and then 20 home runs, 17 home runs with 20, and then 23 home runs. So he's averaged around 20 home runs each of the past 3 years with an average around between 280 and 289. So hitting is absolutely amazing. I think it's quite a bit above Cal's. Cal's B-WAR, so not Fangraphs, but it was 4.7, and then Contreras was 4.9. So that was also another factor. And
So
then
that's it's interesting because Fangraphs, I think Rallies was 4.9 as a catcher, Contreras was 4.8. So,
okay, so just a
but
little
it's
different
pretty much
calculation.
yeah, but.
And then now, so I think it's easy just to look at last year, the defense, and say, okay, Raleigh's like head and shoulders better. But if you go and look back to 2023, Contreras was sixth in framing with seven framing runs, and Raleigh was 10th. So 10th place. So he was better. He had better framing in 2023, while Raleigh's framing this past year was a lot better. You can't. I think you can't overlook the stats in the past. Um, and then now, I guess looking at 2023 in terms of defensive runs saved for the catcher, Contreras was 14th with five. And then now looking for Cal, Cal was 23rd with two defensive runs saved. So is that just Cal improving greatly? Because I think Cal's a great defender, but you can't say that William Contreras isn't going to be. Maybe he can take that leap that Cal took. Because in 2023, William was the better defender. So I think that the defense, Cal's got him, but I think by far William has him in terms of hitting. And I can see that continuing more than I can see Raleigh hitting another 35 home runs next year. So
Well, I mean, he's hit 30 home runs the past two seasons.
yeah, let's see. So 27, 30, 34. Dude, it's so tough though. But his strikeout numbers, 122, 158, and 176. So every year he's striking out 20 to 35 more times. And his OPS has decreased each of the last 3 seasons.
But
So
don't
774, 762, 748. So
don't you expect that with a catcher though? Like, I mean, I get it's a nice perk to have if your guy isn't striking out a lot. But if you're hitting me 34 home runs, I don't really care how much you're striking out, to be honest. Whereas
no, but
For William, I would say, yeah, that's great because like he doesn't have as much power as Cal, and so
Mhm.
I'd like you to not strike out 30% of the time. But with Cal, I mean, again, I would say it's like if you're gonna hit me 34 home runs and drive in 100 runs, you can strike out 30% of the time, and I don't have a big issue with it.
yeah, I get it. But I mean, no matter like I do like what you said with how he fits the mold for what you imagine a catcher to be, which usually is, yes, fielding and then home runs, but it's still just a spot in the lineup. Like there's nothing, it's not nothing more than that. Like you still don't want a guy batting fourth or fifth in your lineup that's going to strike out that much with bases loaded, um, or whatever it is, bases loaded, guys on base, the bases are juiced. So yeah, I don't know. William Contreras, that OPS in the mid 800s, it's hard for me to overlook that and say he's not the best. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely fair. I want to check one more thing. I just want to see what
yeah, and
Cal.
we can throw our honorable mentions in too.
Yeah, yeah, he was. So yeah, to your point, I wouldn't have told you William was better defensively in 2023, but it does. I he probably was for sure. Which that's saying something to William too, because the years before that were not really that good at all. So I think that does speak a lot. Do you want to go first with those then?
Yeah, I can just throw him out there. So I
Okay.
have Oh Happy. I'll give him a little bit of respect. Your Angels guy.
Yep.
Um, his hitting is really what's the perk here. So 20 home runs last year, and then 2023 had 14 home runs, and then 112 OPS in 2023, and then 100 OPS plus last year. So hitting's good. In terms of defense, he had negative one framing runs and then one defensive run, so pretty much net zero, just as average as possible, which I feel like you want a better defender. Like you don't want just an average defender, so that's why he didn't make my top 10. And then I have Shea Langoliers.
Hmm.
He hits bombs. That's really all there is to it. He has 29 home runs, 739 OPS with an OPS plus of 111, but his defense is just so atrocious. 97th in defensive runs saved,
Yeah.
which was just about at the bottom with negative 10, and then just about at the bottom with framing runs, which is 51st with negative 5 framing runs. So tough to put him in top 10 with that bad of defense.
Yeah, yeah. So I had four guys actually, and I would say most of them could have probably been rotated into my top 10 or like 10 or 9, but they landed on the outside. So Ohapi was one of mine. Looking towards 2025, one of the things I didn't like is Travis Darno being there now. Thinking about
Hmm.
that signing more, I actually really don't like it. And I know I'm a supporter of getting a backup for or somebody else for Adley, and we'll see how much he plays, Travis Darno. But I feel like this is a really good season to give Ohapi more run. Like you were saying, the defense is kind of a net zero, but the hitting is
Yeah.
pretty all right, and he probably needs to lower his strikeout numbers, get his walk numbers up. But he's got good power, and I feel like he is a part of a core that is starting to develop, if however you want to look at that. But I feel like he's could be primed for a really good season this year, and I think a lot of people already think he's kind of going to be the next kind of really good catcher. So I wish Travis d'Arnaud wasn't there, but I still think he's worth getting a shout out, like you were saying. Francisco Alvarez is also another one I wanted to shout out. I think this could be a guy that's like not, I wouldn't say hero or zero next season, but I think he can make a really big jump.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
I know there's stats supporting him, like when he's on the field versus when he's off the field. The Mets are a lot better when he's on the field, and I think that says something. But I want to see a little bit more before I put him in my top 10. But I think there's a real possibility he makes a huge jump this year. Alejandro Kirk was another guy I wrote down. Defense is always going to be there with him, but I want to see more offensive production outside of 2022 when he had, I think he was a Silver Slugger that year. And yeah, just the bat has not been there the past 2 years. And so I'd like to see more of that for me to consider a top 10 spot. And then this was a guy that kind of snuck by me for doing this, but Sean Murphy in Atlanta.
Mhm.
Looking back
Yeah.
at some of his previous seasons, he was actually like probably a top five, top three catcher. He had a bit of a tough year last year. He also had an injury. So it was kind of like a weird spot where are you going to just rely on previous years, or do you think he's just going to return back to like a good Sean Murphy and kind of part of a really bad spell Atlanta had with injuries last year where a lot of guys kept getting hurt, a lot of guys weren't seeing the field. He kind of got thrown into that bunch. So I think a guy I easily overlooked, but a guy that I think could come out really strong next year too. But for right now, just kind of left him outside, but still worthy of a honorable mention.
I completely forgot about Sean Murphy. Yeah, if this was a year ago today and we were making these rankings,
Oh
he
yeah,
would probably be
easy
top
top
5.
10.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
but
Yeah.
just kind
But
of thinking about it. So
he could easily return to his form before because he
yeah,
consistently showed some good seasons.
yeah,
And even
100%.
after that injury, he didn't look anywhere near himself. So I also do like Logan O'Hoppe a lot. 24 years old. He's turning 25 soon, but
Yep.
super young, lots of upside. And Travis Darno, yeah, I agree with that. But also, is there like when has O'Hoppe had somebody to learn from on the Angels, catcher wise, like a veteran? he's never had that. So maybe they're testing out giving him somebody to teach him defensively because his defensive numbers are not good. So maybe Darno has had some good defensive seasons early on in his career, so maybe he can help him with that. And then hitting, Darno has also had some good hitting seasons. So
Yeah, I
as
was
long
gonna
as they
say
split it 75-25, I'll be happy, but it might be 50-50, which would definitely hurt the run.
I was gonna say Darno could also play DH, but they also signed Jorge Soler this season or this offseason.
Yeah.
And so that team is so weird.
It's
But
interesting. I don't know. I don't like the moves. I think they're just trying to cling on to whatever they can to get their fans excited, but I don't see it being anything more than like a 75 win team, honestly.
I really wish Sasaki said that was one of his final three teams. I'd love to see him in LA. That'd be funny to me. I think that'd be a funny move. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this week. We're gonna decide our next position for next week, but obviously that'll be a week away from now, and we'll get you guys that one. But let us know what you guys think of our list. Who had the better list? Should guys be higher or lower based on that? Let us know what you guys think. Make sure to follow us on all of our social medias at Loose and Groovy Baseball Show. You'll know where to find us. And yeah, signing off for now. Me and Parker. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.